Breaking now, a Florida jury has found CNN guilty of defamation more than 2 years after a security contractor sued the network for a report they did on the high costs of evacuating people from Afghanistan. In that November 2021 report, CNN described Navy veteran Zachary Young's work evacuating Afghans after the Taliban retook power 3 months prior. The network alleged he quoted high prices to evacuate people who were in fear of their lives. Young argued his reputation and business were destroyed after the network showed his face on screen during their report on high fees and a black market related to smuggling desperate Afghans out of the country. And the jury agreed. They concluded that the network's report was materially false and made with negligence. Young was awarded $5 million for lost business opportunities. The jury also awarded punitive damages. Now, that amount won't be decided until after jurors hear testimony about CNN's financial value. The Supreme Court today upheld the US ban on TikTok. The law, set to go into effect Sunday, could impact more than 160 million American users of the social media app. It seems to be up to President-elect Trump now to decide what is next for TikTok's future in the United States. And joining me now is the Hill's courts and legal reporter, Zach Schoenfeld, who has covered this case from the beginning. Zach, the justices ruled unanimously on the ban, so have we seen any response yet from the social media company?
We have now heard a response from TikTok itself. TikTok's CEO actually just posted a video on the platform on TikTok, not giving a whole lot of specifics of what's going to happen on Sunday when this law does go into effect, but instead really looking ahead to what is about to be the second Trump administration. He thanked the president-elect for his support of TikTok. President-elect Trump, of course, has really been sympathizing with TikTok after he used it during his presidential campaign, which is now taking him to the White House. And as the Supreme Court was hearing this case, President-elect Trump had told the justices that if he is allowed to get into office, he would be able to negotiate some sort of deal or sale that would allow TikTok to remain in the United States. So I think where TikTok is following this decision is they're looking ahead to the Trump administration, hoping for some sort of solution here. But at least as of right now, it's unclear what that's going to look like.
And obviously, as you say, the timing here is crucial and fascinating because of the transition. The Biden White House released a statement after the ruling saying that because of the timing, any actions to implement the law will fall to the incoming Trump administration. Now, Trump has warmed up to TikTok since his first presidency. He had proposed a ban. Now he has a lot of followers on the app. Do we expect Trump to enforce this ban?
It is possible that his administration will just say that they're not going to enforce this law. But even if he does somehow issue an executive order or something of that like, saying his own Justice Department is not going to punish companies who violate the law, there's a whole other question of whether the tech companies are going to go along with it. The way this law is designed is it regulates companies like Apple, Google, and Oracle, these service providers that are unable to offer their own services to TikTok come Sunday. So if Apple keeps TikTok on the App Store, it would have to risk the run that it could be found liable under this law and then fined. And the way this law works is it allows the fines to be $5,000 per user. So if you just quickly do that math on the back of the napkin, $5,000 fines, then 170 million users, we could be talking about fines in the billions of dollars. So it's really unclear at this moment, even if President-elect Trump truly does want to just not enforce this law and keep TikTok alive in the interim, it's unclear if the tech industry is going to go along with it.
I'm glad I'm not on the hook for $5,000 a user. That seems pretty perilous. But there have also been reports floating around that Chinese government officials have considered perhaps selling the app to Elon Musk. And we've had YouTube icon, Mr. Beast, writing on X that he would buy TikTok to avoid or circumvent the ban. Is there any serious discussion, really, of a TikTok sale at this late stage?
It's unclear at this point how serious those conversations are. As you mentioned, there's been a lot of talk from different folks saying that they'll buy TikTok. You mentioned the few there. Kevin O'Leary was on Fox today saying that there's an offer on the table for $20 billion for TikTok. But as this case has been progressing through the courts all along, TikTok and ByteDance, its Chinese-based parent company, have been insisting that a divestment here is just not feasible. They said if the Supreme Court did uphold this law, which they did, that it would essentially be the doomsday scenario for TikTok. TikTok has said that it would, quote, go dark once this law takes effect. So yes, now things could change. The government, the Biden administration, as this case was progressing in the courts, had accused TikTok of effectively playing a game of chicken where they weren't even willing to entertain talk about a sale. But the Biden administration has said that, now once this law goes into effect, maybe TikTok will change course and it'll change the landscape and we will be moving towards a sale. One other thing I'll just note is, even when this law does go into effect on Sunday and restricts TikTok, it's not irreversible. So even if we get months down the line and then TikTok decides, okay, we'll divest, we'll sell, it could then come back to normal operations. It's not irreversible.
On the topic of a potential sale, Zach, there has been a lot of discussion, of course, over the value of TikTok, and some people have said it could be worth up to $200 billion. But most, or a lot of that value at least, seems to come from the algorithm that the app uses. So how much of a sticking point is that for ByteDance, this idea that they obviously don't want to let go of that very valuable algorithm?
Yeah, that has been the central focus of this case, is that TikTok algorithm that is owned by ByteDance. During the oral arguments at the Supreme Court last week, we saw justices asking questions about the algorithm and the practical implications, of getting rid of that one and finding some sort of new algorithm to support the platform. But TikTok has been saying that that's just not feasible. They first of all note that they have a global team of engineers across the globe that has worked to develop their source code that helps make up this algorithm. So they said they'd effectively really having to be starting from scratch. So they say that just was not on the table. And the algorithm, I should also note, really was the central focus of this case, because that is what TikTok has been arguing was its free speech here. This was a First Amendment case. TikTok argued that this law violated the free speech rights of TikTok, and it was talking about this algorithm and its scheme of deciding what content to display for users. That editorial discretion, that was at the heart of TikTok's argument, saying that it implicates here their free speech rights.
Fantastic reporting, Zach. We appreciate you being right there outside the Supreme Court for us. Thanks again.
Thanks, Niall.
Breaking news today, President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration will now take place indoors, inside the Capitol Rotunda. Trump announced the change in a social media post. Washington, D.C. is set to see dangerously cold temperatures on Monday, cold enough to cause big disruption to the big event. Joining me now is the Hill's national political reporter, Cate Martel.
Hey, Niall.
Hey, Kate. So what else do we know about this move to hold the inauguration inside?
Well, Niall, we know that this is the first time in 40 years that the inauguration will be held inside. It's for safety reasons, and it sounds like it's a very compelling reason that the lows may be around 6 degrees. There might be some bitterly cold wind as well. So Trump has made the decision to move this indoors. Now, this will raise the question of crowds, that this is obviously very important to President-elect Trump, as we famously saw in 2017. So when in his Truth Social post, President-elect Trump did emphasize the fact that this will be a major event on television, and said that the angles and everything will make for a good television show, as well as Capital One Arena will be open for overflow, because when you have this in the Capitol Rotunda, there will not be as much room for as many guests. You'll still have the VIPs, but there likely will not be able to fit as many people as you'd fit outdoors. So now there will be overflow at Capital One Arena, and it'll still go on as planned. And now all the other events that will be happening that day, including the inauguration balls, will go on as planned, and there will be no changes towards those.
I think perhaps a rare example of Mr. Trump announcing something that will be widely welcomed in the journalistic community. I think a lot of people will be happy not to be freezing outside the Capitol for several hours. In any event, at the occasion of his inauguration, we'll see multiple tech billionaires. There's been quite a lot of focus on that. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk, of course, they're all showing support as he prepares to take back the reins of power. Beyond that, who else can we expect to see Monday, Kate?
There'll be a lot of big names at the inauguration, Niall. We'll have former presidents Bush, Clinton, and Obama, as well as soon-to-be former President Biden. I think it's also notable that the CEO of TikTok will likely be in attendance. We've heard strong reporting that he might be there at a very crucial time when, as Zach pointed out, that TikTok may either be banned or at the very best case in limbo. So there's going to be a lot of big names there on Monday, as well as these tech leaders that you mentioned. That's notable because there hasn't always been a great relationship between a lot of these tech leaders and the president-elect Trump, but this time around, he's receiving a much warmer reception by the tech industry, and I think that'll carry over into the administration. By having them at inauguration is sure setting them off onto a more positive foot than we saw last time.
So to swing from tech to arts and music, country star Carrie Underwood is set to perform America the Beautiful on Monday. Do you think her presence is in any way a sign that A-list celebrities are maybe more comfortable tying themselves to Trump than might have been the case during his first term?
I think it does show that, Niall. And obviously, Hollywood is still very much a lot of liberal voices, but Carrie Underwood is a notably higher caliber star than Trump is usually used to attracting at his events. She did say that she's not doing this because of an endorsement. She hasn't actually endorsed President-elect Trump, but is doing this in the spirit of unity. So, as we are headed into this second Trump administration, we are starting to see a slightly warmer reception from Hollywood stars, and by showing that Carrie Underwood is going to be performing America the Beautiful and The Village, who famously performs YMCA, will also be performing during inauguration weekend, I think is going to be showing us that there is, a slight thaw in Hollywood, and we might see that play out over the next few years.
So talking of Hollywood, the president-elect, as we all know, is full of surprises, and he made another surprise announcement on Thursday because he talked about how he was going to appoint several special envoys to Hollywood. And as you know, Kate, he named Jon Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone. Beyond those names, what do we actually know about what the goal is here?
Yeah, it's interesting now because these are obviously not positions that are known to an administration. And actually, Mel Gibson said that he was caught off guard himself by this announcement. And so what we know of the goal of this special Hollywood envoy is to be the eyes and ears within the Hollywood business. And Trump was pointing to what it appears to be the fact that a lot of films and TV shows are filmed abroad because of tax incentives. And he wants to bring business back to the United States in the entertainment industry. So that is the goal of this special envoy for Hollywood. But I think more broadly, we're seeing that, as liberal as we do see Hollywood has been, there is this recognition among Republicans and conservatives that pop culture is really important to them. And before, had been conceded mostly to being liberal voices. But I think that now we're starting to see that Trump is wanting to work more with Hollywood and wants to see a more positive reception among some of these industry leaders. And that's, a first step in having an envoy like this and potentially trying to take some steps to help Hollywood and to potentially bring back some of this business to the United States.
Great conversation. Kate, thanks so much.
Thanks, Niall.
Dramatic video out of the Caribbean after a SpaceX rocket exploded after takeoff. The private spaceflight company owned by billionaire and Trump ally Elon Musk launched its Starship rocket Thursday evening from the southern tip of Texas. The company says while the booster made it back to the launch pad, the onboard engines began shutting down one by one during the ascent, and communication with the 400-foot rocket was lost about 8.5 minutes in. SpaceX said the rocket broke apart in what it called a rapid unscheduled disassembly and began reburning on entry. In a series of posts on X, Musk acknowledged the failed launch and said an improved version of the ship and booster are already waiting to launch. Joe Biden is bidding the country farewell after just a single term in office, but of course he's not the first president who's had to do that. In today's Political Minute, News Nation's Conal McShane takes us through the parting words of one-term presidents.
President Biden says goodbye after only one term in office. I'm Conal McShane with News Nation. In his farewell address, Biden reflected on his more than 50 years in public service, including his 4 years as president. Now, certainly he's not the first president forced to frame a legacy after one term. President Lyndon Johnson urged Congress 5 days before Richard Nixon's inauguration to protect his legislative accomplishments, saying that a failure to carry them out would be a tragedy for the country. President Gerald Ford struck a different tone. Now, remember, he was never elected as president or vice president, and in his farewell address, he left the door open for a political comeback, saying, "This report will be my last. maybe. George H.W. Bush spoke of losing in his final speech, which was delivered at West Point. Losing's never easy, Bush told the cadets. Trust me, I know something about that. And don't forget Donald Trump, who ended his first term by promising that he would be back in some form. I'm Cate McShane. This is the News Nation Political Minute.
You can find more news and analysis from Connell and our colleagues 24/7 on News Nation. To find News Nation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. And that's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Niall Stanage. Be sure to like, share and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.